Hi everyone, it's Catherine here from Inky Finger Cat, and this is my first play with Stampwheel 2.0. So I thought I'd do a longer than normal video. I ended up making 2 cards, but it took me a few hours to get to this point where I'd finished 2 cards. I've got some leftover bits and pieces, and generally I just had a little bit of fun testing it out. So, those that saw my whole video a week or so ago, I can't remember when it was, will know that I opened the box, pulled everything out, but didn't really do anything with it. And I haven't done anything with it until now because I was doing Christmas in July and I just didn't want to start doing an experiment with new supplies or a new technique or new equipment. I just thought, no, that's too much to do. So I've slowed down today and I've done this. So I am taking all of the bits of acrylic off. Is it called acrylic? Is it acetate? I don't know what it is. The plastic bits off the grippy mat. I've taken them off both sides, which was probably a mistake. I probably should have done one side first and then done the other. And sticking it into place. Obviously it moves, as in it's removable. I'm not entirely sure if you're meant to use that grid or not, but because it's got those kind of creases in it that I created when I was taking it off the grip mat, I've just chucked it away. I decided not to keep it. So I'm having a look at the back, and it's got like some squidgy bits that are the stands that kind of adhere into place onto my tool. My glass mat. It has the panel that comes out, which allows you to put a piece full size of A4 if you took the piece out, but I decided not to do that for this occasion. And you saw at the very beginning I took the film off the actual plate, the sort of the lid part. That's the bit that you add your stamps to. So I decided to choose to play with these roses that are from Altenew. I've had them for quite a while and I've not used them in ages. I think there's probably another video somewhere in the archives of me using this. And I'm umming and ahhing on whether to do the rosebud as well, and I decided against the rosebud I'd just do the open flower and the slightly open flower. And I'm just going to start with that. So I'm deciding what sort of size piece of paper, and I end up just basically chopping it in half, is what I end up doing. I just end up chopping it in half, for this first go. This is all in real time, so you can see how slowly I'm going. I will obviously be speeding up bits of the video, because you don't want to be here for several hours. Also, halfway through all of this, I had some breakfast, I did meal planning, we went to the supermarket, then a little bit later I did some more stamping and die cutting, and then I had my lunch. So yeah, this was very much been a longer video in terms of the making, so I'm not going to do it all in full time for you. So you can see there I have popped 2 stamps on to my lid. I'm now going and choosing what colours do I want, and I'm conscious of the fact that there are 4 colours to choose for this particular layering stamp set. So I'm choosing 4 different colours of yellow, kind of. I don't know why that peach was there, because that's not what I use. There we go. I think I use the more mustard, possibly. So I use So Saffron, Daffodil Delight, Hello Honey, I think it is, and More Mustard are the 4 yellows I ended up choosing. You'll see, or you'll have seen from the thumbnail, I don't end up with any yellow on my card. There is a reason for that. I'm going to use these yellow flowers for my mum's birthday card, which I need to make today. I've now got all of the roses stamped and some leaves stamped, but not much else. So you'll see there, as I put it down, I'm sort of struggling to slot it into place. I realise much later on when I'm doing the leaves that there is a top and a bottom to this, and it goes in a lot easier if it's the right way round. This way round, it's a bit of a struggle, and you sort of have to sort of push it into place. And I was thinking, oh, don't like this. But when I get onto the leaves, I realise what's gone wrong is that I've chosen to put the stamps on the layer that's not really meant to fit that way around. It is reversible, and I don't know if it's an error that they've done it that way round so that it's more difficult to do it one side than the other. I don't know. Anyway, I'm giving you my true opinion on this quite expensive tool. I am following the little guide there to the left hand side as to where the stamps go. And I do make a mess on the main rows in terms of the final layer of the stamp. I do not put in the right place. And it's not quite right. It really doesn't matter. These sorts of things are very unforgiving. So you can see there, I've got the 2 stamps that are already on the tool. I'm using the thing with the little hole. There is one of the little bobbles going out to the side has got a hole in it. And I'm using that to kind of guide where it is that I'm putting it, so that it's always in the middle of one of the open sides. That's how I'm deciding how to turn it. But you can see here I'm struggling a little bit. Clicks into place and then it's fine. I think once I got used to the clicking into place, I was all right with it. At this point, I suddenly realised, oh, I could start inking up and doing them all as I go round. I get a lot faster at this in real life anyway, but obviously I'm about to start speeding it up. But this is me just testing it out, working out how to use it, what's the best way. And you do kind of have to like press a little bit on it so that it then adheres to the paper. I think that's really good because it means you're not going to slip and end up with an image where you don't really want it to be. I quite like the fact that that's what happens. Now for all of these, I pretty much have to stamp them twice. Reason being is that some of my inks are not as juicy as they used to be. So now I'm starting to build up a little bit of speed here. I'll start, right, there's one colour of ink and, oh, no, I'm not. Ignore me. I thought I was. Yeah, so I'm just now stamping the second one into place. This is when I'm sort of realising probably should have done something about maybe having a square piece of paper in here to be able to capture more of my images. I've sort of realised that's probably the case. And you'll see eventually I do move on to using square pieces of paper. Or just stuck in the whole piece of A4 would have been sensible, because it really doesn't matter. You know, you just end up with a bit off the end that you're not using. So this is me now with, I've got the 2 stamps on, 2 sets of layering stamps on, sorry. And I'm starting to build up a layer on my rows. And now it's time to add the 3rd layer. So I'm going to start going a little bit faster in terms of my video now so that we're not here for 3 hours. You can see what I'm doing here. I've now picked up the 3rd layer of stamping. 3rd layer stamps. I'm now using a 3rd colour on my plate and I am inking all of them in one go. So I do a layer of each colour as I'm going. Obviously I don't need to worry about the one that's going to hang off the edge. What I also don't need to worry about is it hanging off the edge. It really doesn't matter because it's just going to sit on that grip mat, and that grip mat wipes clean with a baby wipe or with water and a soft cloth. So I'm not so concerned about it, but I've now managed to get 3 layers. And now we're on to our 4th layer, and this is the one that I don't quite line up right on the main flower. I just didn't get it in quite the right place. I obviously wasn't concentrating and looking at the picture. So it's just not quite as it should be. But now I've got all 4 layers of stamps on my stamp wheel and I can stamp all of them at the same time. Now, these stamps would work well if you literally just went with the same colour of ink. It would be more subtle than what we end up with here, but it would work in terms of having the layers. And on the final set of, on one of the sets of leaves, that's what I do, is I stick to 2 colours of ink rather than 3, and I just do 2 layers with the same ink over and over. And then I do the veins with a slightly different coloured green. But yeah, and when I use it as to create my wreath, I go for the same colour over and over again. So you can do it and it just builds up, and where you're stamping it, because you're stamping it only in some areas twice with that same colour, it'll automatically look darker, but it is more subtle. So you can see here I have swapped over and I'm now on a different piece of cardstock, and I am inking all my stamps up, all the same colours as I said earlier, and I am just layering them down until I've got the depth of colour that I'm after. Some cases I'm not re-inking because I know there's still some ink on the stamps from the previous round, and I'm just using it to just darken it a little bit, add that little bit of extra colour. So after I've done this, what I completely forgot was the one that's slightly open does have a bit of green to it as well, and I should have done that as one of my layers when I was doing my leaves. I completely forgot that. Completely forgot. So I have to go in and fix all of my slightly open roses at a later stage, but you'll see how I do that later. So you can see here I've changed colours. So I'm going for peachy colours this time. I think Crisp Cantaloupe, Calypso Coral, Tangerine Tango, and there was another one. Can't remember the other colour, is what I use. And because I've left all my stamps in the same place, it's nice and easy because I don't have to worry about relayering them all up. Obviously the problem is that that fourth layer is in slightly the wrong place, but it really doesn't matter. No one will notice. If I'd not told you, you wouldn't have noticed. This time I have moved to the square piece of card because obviously I know that I can. I then move on to another colour of stamping, and this time we are going for pinks, and we have, I'm going to say Blushing Bride, Sweet Sugar Plum, and I can't remember the others. Strawberry Slush, I think one of them. Yeah, can't remember what the other one is, but I do the pinks. And then I do some purples. Wisteria Wonder, Perfect Plum, Rich Raspberry and Blackberry Bliss is what I go with for this. And don't worry that you can see that there's a bit of a hot mess going on with my plate. There's a lot of extra ink. It all wipes off. It all cleans up nicely. That will stain your grip mat, so just be conscious of that. But it will not, and it'll stain your stamps. But it doesn't seem to be staining the actual cover at this point in time because I'm not using any kind of permanent ink. Now, I've gone in with my leaves and you can see I've left all my roses still attached, and I've turned it over, and now it is sliding it in and out of that square much easier. I'm not having to kind of click it into place. I just went for, I did originally start with 3 colours of green on the leaves, but I just ended up going to 2. And I did that in the centre of all of the pieces where it's the square piece. And it's just giving me 4 of the bigger leaf and 4 of the smaller leaf. But can you see how easy? I mean, I know this is really speeded up now, but it's so easy at this point. Now, I decided to go for a slightly different colour and have some darker green come in when I was doing those half pieces where it was with the yellow. And I just used, again, the 2 colours of the green ink for that. So at this point, I'm like cooking on gas. That's really easy and really quite cool. So on to technique number 2 of using a stamp wheel. And this, to be honest, is probably more the reason I bought it, because the other one, pretty much like the stamp platform, I can go over and over and over and over again. I do think this is slightly easier to use, although the fact that it's not connected is in some ways a bit weird. But anyway, the reason I wanted the stamp wheel was for doing a wreath type thing. I'm sorry I'm on a really jaunty angle. I don't know why. I've decided my mat needs to be on a jaunty angle. Because it's the mat that's on the angle, not the desk or the camera. So the stamp wheel, what you can do is do as we did before. We are just going to stamp them, and then we're going to turn it so it's at 90-degree angle. This is me experimenting as to whether I could get away with less than a 90-degree angle, but I didn't. I just went with 90-degree angle. I could absolutely do this a lot easier if I wasn't using layering stamps. I have to admit, this is not the most sensible way of doing it. Choosing a single stamp would have been better than using layering stamps, but anyway. I am stamping all 4 of them. I can't remember, I think it was Pear Pizzazz I chose for this one. I used a whole mixture of different inks. I used some Concord and Ninth as well as my Stampin' Up inks for this. Right, so that is a wreath. I'm now going to have to do the same thing with the layering stamps and work out what I want with that. Good news is now I've done all 4 of them, I can layer up the other layers as well. I don't need to worry about where they are, well, as long as I'm not going to put them where the stamps is, which is what I realised that the other stamps were going to be there. But yeah, I can pop those layers on. This is me being daft. No, that's still wrong. That's where it needs to be, Catherine. But yeah, I can pop all of them on. Oops, I managed to mess those ones up and move them around. But there we go. So this will give me all 3 layers of this particular stamp set. And this is where I decided to just keep 2 very similar inks. So I do all of them in the same ink, just going over it multiple times. And now I'm layering it up. I'm taking note where my hole is, and it was at the right hand side. So that means on the next time I stamp it, it needs to be at the bottom. And the way I sort of trying to do this at this point, I was like, if I pick it up, try and put hand where that, when I pick it up after I've inked it, where is my dot? That's the first thing I'm looking for, is where is my dot and where does my dot need to be? That's what I'm using my brain to do at the time that I'm doing the stamping. And you can see here it's much more subtle with these 3 layers being the same colour of ink, but it absolutely works, and you can absolutely pop the same ink and it just gets darker in the places where it stamps. It gets more intense, but it's the same colour, if that makes sense. So that's the simple bit. Now, I could absolutely leave this as it is, but I decided I wanted to do a bit of masking, and this is where it was like, oh, this is a bit daft. I haven't really got any masking paper. I've only got some post-it notes, and they're these rubbishy ones. So I need to stamp my leaves, and I'm just trying to work out what do I need to do here. I need to stamp the main 2 leaves twice. Yeah, that's going to work. And I need to do them as close to the post-it note part as possible. Doesn't really matter because they don't stick at any point. Is this a successful piece of work? Well, never mind. And then I'm just going to cut these out as little masks with a few layers so that I can do it all in one go. So I've got 4 layers, and I'm just going to cut out these leaves. I'm not really bothered that they might overlap slightly. I just didn't want them to totally overlap because I'm going to go for a different colour. And so I'm just going to pop these in place, but these actually turn out to have no sticky on them whatsoever. So this is all quite fussy. But I'm going to cover each one of those leaves up. There is a little bit of post-it on that particular big leaf, but not very much. Okay, and now I'm going to go and stamp those leaves, but I'm going to go off at an angle. So originally we had it so that the dot was in the middle of each of the white panels. So now we're going to do it so that the dot is just off to one side. And that will stamp it slightly off to the side of the other one. Can you see what I mean about the post-it notes? They did not work. It was a bit fussy. But yeah, they go off to the angle in the background, but I'm going to be stamping all 3 types of leaf at the same time. So I need to go round the circle now and do the same on all 4 sides. So again, I'm going to pop you into fast forward because it's quite repetitive, and absolutely every time those leaves move that I have done on the post-it note, so that was almost a complete waste of time. And also because I am stamping in a lighter ink, I think this is called Eucalyptus, it's a Concord 9th ink, because I just wanted it to be a little bit of shadow in the background. It doesn't really show up particularly well where they've overstamped them, but there's my wreath. Okay, and I wanted to just show you another way of using the stamp wheel, and that's for your stencils. So because it's got the grip mat and you've got your stamp wheel that has that panel that comes off, you can use really big stencils. This would not work so well on my waffle flower one because my waffle flower one is not big enough. So, because I think it's a 6x8 maybe. Yeah, 6x8. So anything wider than 6 inches, it hangs off the edge and it doesn't work. And it also doesn't grip the stencil. whereas this gripped it beautifully for this larger stencil over the top of my panel. I think my panel is 5 3/4 of an inch wide. Yeah, I think that's how big my square is. So it's almost a 6-inch panel, and it works perfectly for it, for gripping it, put it in place. And I just chose some inks that I had used within the stamping in order to coordinate, and this was just a random leaf stencil. I think it's a Dilutions one, but I could be wrong, not quite sure. I don't have the packaging for most stencils these days. I just keep them all in one box full of stencils. But yeah, I loved that. I had total confidence that that stencil was going to stay put. It wasn't going to move. Doesn't require me to press down on it. So really nice. So that was my third way of using my stamp wheel. Was not really the stamp wheel element, but I was using the grip mat in order to create my background panel, which I will use on one of the cards that I then make. So that's the end of the tutorial technique thing of using the stamp wheel. I'm now going to make 2 cards with all of that stuff that I made. This required quite a lot of die cutting and fiddling around with little bits of washi tape to keep them in place, etc. My cutting mats on my spellbinders are just so bowed, it's ridiculous. I managed to get them back to being straight, and then within a couple of goes they're absolutely bowed again. So yeah, I have to fiddle around quite a lot with a lot of washi tape, and this does take ages. And in fact, I did end up, when I went and had my lunch, with some of this red washi tape stuck to me. Family were wondering what on earth I'd got going on up my arm. So I am gonna not bother videoing most of this, because I think it's at this point that I probably go off and have some lunch. And I did the rest of it off camera whilst I was watching my lovely friend Helen and her YouTube channel. Because sometimes it's just nice to watch somebody else create whilst you're creating. I'm curious actually, do you do that? Do you go and create whilst you're watching my YouTube channels? I'm wondering. So remember those roses that I realised had got a bit of green that should have been stamped? I went for the easy option. Because by this point they were all die cut and they were out of the actual squares. There was no way on earth I was going to line them all back up again. Time and time again, it just was not going to happen. So I decided to just take my little stamp block. This is one of these are the Clarity ones with the little handles. I just found them quite comfortable to hold. And I did the 2 layers of the stamping on these using 2 different colours of the green ink. I don't mind that I don't line them up perfectly. It really doesn't matter. It'll do for the purposes of the cards. So there we go. All of my bits and pieces all into one of those fabulous trays that I love so much from Hey Little Magpie. Right, I am now just going to start creating the cards, and at this point it's really easy because it's just about assembling. So I decided that I knew that all the yellows were going to get used on my mum's birthday card, so that you'll have to watch over on the blog for what I eventually end up making with that, because I'm not sure what I'm going to make yet. I designed my little cluster here. I used a bit of washi tape to just pick up most of it so that it was relatively in the design that I wanted. And then I just glued these last few these last few leaves down that were not there. And then I just checked it was going to work, and then added glue to the back of all of them. Stuck it down, used my fingers to kind of push it in place and make sure that it didn't wriggle around too much. I think that the top, yeah, that bit there, I just slightly tweaked it, and so the glue had started to move some of the ink on it. But there's my quite a big cluster of flowers. You absolutely don't need to put so many on, but I did. And then this is me deciding what sentiment to put on. I ummed and ahed over that yellow, and in the end I decided on that sending hooks. Those are all Altenew sentiments as well, where I have stamped and die cut whole host of them I think there is a technique video, might even been the technique video where I made those particular ones, but there is something up on my channel about using your scraps and multiple creation of die cut sentiments, one after the other, just to finish off. Oh, I found a rosebud thing that hadn't been stamped, so I did that in. But there's card number 1. Kept it really simple. Onto a 6x6, so I did have to just slightly trim down that background because the 6x6 cards are actually just smaller than 6x6. And then just added some white sequins because I didn't want to add another colour in because it's already quite a colourful card. Now this panel, I decided I wanted just to stick to the pink and the purple and to create 2 clusters. And then I decided, oh, I know what I fancy. I fancy a bit of gold in there. And I remembered that I had, this time I used that Kingston's Crafts tape runner in order to pick them up, all of the bits and pieces. But yeah, here's the gold. I decided I wanted to use this Stampin' Up gold laser cut panel. It's from, I think it was called Forever. It was something Forever Gold or Forever Green or something. Well, it can't be green, can it? It must have been Forever Gold. But it's a laser cut panel of the gold. I just slightly adjusted where my roses were then because I remembered I'd got to trim it down a little bit. Just popped my leaf back in. Good news is about using your wet glue is you get that bit of wriggle room. Now at this point I wasn't entirely sure which way I wanted it up. So I changed my mind a couple of times and I ended up doing it to the sort of 90 degrees from where I'd originally thought I would. And then I chose another one of those Altenew stamp sets, Altenew sentiments. Added that along the bottom and then I chose to use some green gems. I just thought they were quite cute and it just added another little pop of the green. Since this was quite a green themed card. I did notice that I'd got a little bit of fluff off the edge of the card blanks from the manufacturing, so I just trimmed them off just slightly, just a little hair's breadth. And there we go, done. So a much longer video than normal. I think you're nearly at half an hour for me of me waffling on, but that was my first use of the stamp wheel. Do I like it? Yes, I do. Do I think it's worth £120? No, I do not. But I am sure I will get much use out of it. Please do leave me a comment below. What do you think? Is this something that I needed? My personal view is no, I didn't. But it is nice to have it. So anyway, please do like this video if you thumbs up if you did, subscribe, and until next time, bye bye.